No Jumper, coolest podcast in the world. And today I'm bringing you a remote conversation with one of my favorite legal minds out there on the scene. I do believe that we're kind of seeing the full immersion of the lawyers into the YouTube content space. It feels like this is happening a lot more. But, you know, me and Mo, we've done some content over the years. But yeah, Mo, happy to have you here.
Yo, it's crazy. The lawyers are everywhere, right? A couple years ago, I was like the only person out here doing it, and now you go YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. The lawyers are getting into the content game.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like actually seeing the audience get intelligent enough that they want, you know, real introspection into some of these cases, and they're not really willing to accept people just getting on camera and, you know, just saying bullshit. So hey, we might as well go to the legal minds.
Well, it's the audience and the legal minds, right? The lawyers, the billboard is dead. Putting yourself on a billboard's a waste of time. YouTube's the new billboard.
Mm.
It takes a while for people to realize that, you could be embarrassed and you can feel like it's not cool and not professional. And then you realize, oh, wait, if I'm not on there, I'm pretty much dead. So it's time to get on there.
Well, let's get on there. Mo, okay. And we will have a link to your social media and your website in the description in case people want to tap in with you and everything like that. But the first thing that I wanted to get into is I'm sure that you've seen the Rollin 60s RICO, as it's being called, that came down from the feds. Bricc Baby, Loose Cannon, and Big U all arrested, as well as a bunch of other people. What kind of insight can you give me into this case?
So the big takeaway here is that there's actually two things happening. There's a Rollin 60s takedown, which means that they have rounded up a bunch of people who they say are in this gang or affiliated with this gang and brought them in for questioning some of them. They've charged some of them, and then they've put some of them in a RICO indictment. But that's very important. The RICO indictment against Big U is different from the Rollin 60s takedown. So Big U's on an indictment with like 6 or 7 other people.
Hmm.
They've got a RICO charge in there. They've got a murder charge in there. He's facing life in there. Now, separate from those 6 or 7 people is separate charges against people who were in the Rollin 60s, allegedly, but not part of the indictment. And so this is very interesting. You saw that press conference. They got like 30, 40 pictures, okay? And then they got a couple charges, individual cases. And then there's the Big U indictment, which is really just, I count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 people. There's only 7 people on the Big U indictment. One of them is your friend Loose Cannon.
Right.
Now, separate from that, there's also a case against Bricc Baby. Bricc Baby is not in the Big U indictment. He's mentioned like sort of tangentially, but he's not a defendant in that Big U indictment.
Because he was allegedly extorted by Big U because he did a robbery and Big U apparently wanted some percentage of the money.
Well, I was not aware of that, but that would make a lot of sense because you would not want to indict Bricc Baby saying that he's part of the Big U enterprise if the story is that Big U's out there extorting Bricc Baby. Now, Bricc Baby has a totally separate charge.
Okay.
He's just got some possession of firearms ammunition charge.
Right.
All of this dates back to an Article 3 wiretap that was back in 2022. I don't know how many people really know about this, but what happens is when you want to get a wiretap, the feds want to get a wiretap, they have to go to a judge, submit an affidavit. Now, nobody knows what happened back in 2022, but back in 2022, the documents are all fully sealed. We know nothing about it other than this. There was a wiretap. That wiretap was on a couple of phones, including Big U, Sylvester Robinson, Mark Martin. Now, Sylvester is Big U's right-hand man, AKA they. Mark Martin is AKA Bear Claw, another member of the Big U indictment. And then there's Bricc Baby. And Bricc Baby's phone was tapped under this wiretap from back in 2022. What you had happen is you had that wiretap in 2022. Fast forward to last year, an individual named Christian Forbes gets indicted for basically selling guns. He's out on bond right now. When he gets indicted for selling guns, shortly thereafter, there's the Bricc Baby indictment. And then shortly thereafter, you have this whole Big U indictment. And so all of these charges seem to link back to a 2022 wiretap that started on several phones of the cast of characters that's involved here.
Right. Okay, and so from our perspective, or from your perspective, why would Bricc Baby be on the poster board that the feds trotted out at that news conference if he's not involved in the more sinister stuff? Like, what is the utility for them to announce all of these arrests at the same time, even if somebody like Bricc Baby's case is very separate?
Well, it's separate, but it's not. So they're saying that there's the Rollin 60s and that all these folks are part of the Rollin 60s, and that's why they've engaged in a Rollin 60s takedown. Then they're saying there's a subset which is run by Big U plus these six other people, and they're involved in this more comprehensive indictment that involves that murder conspiracy, that involves sex trafficking, that involves robbery, extortion, and then also on Big U, they're going to try to hit him with tax evasion. So
Mm.
they got him on two counts for basically not declaring like $150,000 in income.
Right. And I mean, I guess it's kind of surprising for some people to realize that this sort of like extortion racket thing is still going on, in particular within the black community, because it's pretty well documented that there's a lot of this kind of stuff going on with the Mexican mafia and various Hispanic gangs and whatnot, and that they be taxing various people who are in business in situations that are kind of on the edge of legality or things that are full blown illegal. But I guess to a lot of people, that was kind of the surprising thing, is to realize that this sort of thing is still pretty prevalent in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I think it's probably not the headline that caught the Fed's eye in bringing this indictment. I think the murder is
Mm.
where their interest really lies. I think a couple of people on that Big U indictment have already gotten appearance bonds for pretty small amounts, and I don't think it's because they're snitching. I think it's because their overall involvement in this conspiracy is limited to sort of minor crimes. So, I think I'm not surprised to hear somebody like you say, "Oh, they've been doing this in LA forever. What's going on here?" I think that murder though is a problem, and I think that's what really caught the Fed's eye.
Right. So we wouldn't probably even know about all this. Like the feds wouldn't have taken interest in whatever kind of extortion was taking place if it wasn't for the fact that this murder really like alerted them to the fact that there was stuff going on.
Possible. Certainly, my read of it is that that murders was driving that indictment.
Okay. And so Big U apparently caught another charge because he made an Instagram video after his house was raided, before he turned himself in. He made an Instagram video kind of blaming people like Whack 100 and Christopher Lovejoy for essentially getting him caught up, which is kind of crazy because, yes, they were talking about you and they kind of knew that these charges were coming before they were actually formally announced. But at the same time, it's kind of absurd to say that the feds, filed this federal RICO just because they were making content about you. But he also, I guess, basically kind of suggested to other people that they shouldn't be talking to the cops or shouldn't be talking to these people, and he was given another charge, which was kind of shocking to a lot of people that that was enough for him to get another charge, or that he would have made any kind of statement like that without having spoken to a lawyer first.
And that last part, I'm very surprised that he didn't speak to a lawyer first. I don't think he had a lawyer lined up for this situation. He's actually already changed lawyers.
Mm.
I think when he went in there on his first appearance, he had a public defender, or maybe he had somebody he retained. But in a matter of 3 weeks, he's already filed a notice that he wants to substitute his attorney. I believe it was basically just a public defender that he was assigned. Now he's got some other guy. Not sure how I feel about the other guy. The other guy was admitted to the California bar in the early 80s. So he's
Mm.
been around for like 30, 40 years, which is, kind of a green flag. But then if you've been around for 30, 40 years, you'd expect to have like a really dope website and a list of all the trials that you've just smashed out of the park. This guy doesn't have that. So when I see the Big U situation where the guy goes and he knows that the feds are after him, he gets into a car and says, "I'm turning myself in, these are the rats," or whatever it is exactly that he said. That's not a good look. The feds also noted that when he turned himself in, he didn't have his phone on him. It looks like he dumped his phone, and then he was using his wife's phone to do that Instagram video, and that's odd. Why is he using somebody else's phone? So the real takeaway when you hear that charge and you see what Big U did, and then you see this change in lawyers, he wasn't ready for this. This thing came and hit him, just it knocked him right off his feet, and he was just scrambling, making kind of weird moves and moving silly.
Yeah, I hope we don't find out that he got his lawyer at the swap meet. That would be bad news. Um,
Yeah.
but okay, so there's been a lot of conversation about Loose Cannon and how he's been essentially like calling into every possible podcast, including multiple times on No Jumper, basically talking about whatever, like not really sounding like a person who would have the amount of anxiety that you would expect from somebody who's facing a Fed case. What are the potential ramifications of a person who's facing a case like this calling in to podcasts? Because on one hand, as long as he doesn't say anything totally out of pocket, it doesn't seem like it would be the biggest deal, but it also seems like almost anything he says in this sort of situation is going to be placed under extreme scrutiny. So how would you advise somebody like him in regards to how they should approach the media while they're locked up on a case like this?
Nothing good can come out of talking unless you are moving like, unless you're playing like 7D chess and you really have like some crazy elaborate plan worked out and you're now executing it by going onto media and putting storylines or narratives out there. I can't imagine that would ever be a good move.
Okay. But does it, like, what are the likelihood, what's the likelihood from your perspective that any of that stuff that he's saying on podcasts could actually be used against him? Because if the situation is like they're looking for evidence that he might be a bad guy or a gangster or a tough guy or whatever, I mean, it feels like that ship has kind of already sailed, having been on, tons of different podcasts talking about that exact stuff. But then again, like, I guess talking about it from the feds maybe makes you look like you're not repentant, like you're still sort of celebrating this lifestyle. But I don't know how much that sort of character judgment would come into play.
There's just so many different angles, right? So the stuff you say can complicate things in so many ways. The repent angle is very important. Everything you say now is going to come up in a pre-sentence report if you take a plea or you go to trial and get found guilty. So it's important that you conduct yourself in a manner that's going to make you look really good after you got arrested so that your lawyer can go in there and say, Judge, once these charges were brought, my client has shown nothing but absolutely perfect behavior.
Hmm.
So that's just, you don't want to be saying stuff that could be used against you in a pre-sentence report. The other thing, you're saying things that could now contradict what you said before. You're saying things that they could now ask you questions about. You're saying things that open up the comments section. Nothing good's going to come out of it.
No, definitely.
Hey, just a word. Did you guys know that you could have seen this full interview a couple of weeks ago if you were just a member? That's right. For $5 a month, you get early access to all of our interviews before the clips drop, and they're completely uncensored. So no annoying censorship. You get to hear all the swear words. It's great. You'll love it. $5 a month. Hit the link down in the description or go to youtube.com/nojumper. Appreciate you.
Okay. So as far as the people who've already gotten out, there's been a lot of speculation that anyone who's gotten out already must be an informant or snitching. You're saying that's not necessarily the case because in reality, some of the people charged were charged with things so minor that we shouldn't be expecting them to have to sit down for an extended period of time.
Yes, I am saying that there are parts of this indictment that involve people who have not been directly implicated in the murder. They're only a subset of maybe, say, the prostitution angle or, say, the extortion angle. And so I'm not surprised that some of these people could get a bond. I think to the extent anybody is accusing anybody in the Big U indictment of snitching, they are doing it on the basis of non-public information. And so they would have to reference their sources. And then you'd have to take a detailed look at what that source is exactly. And so, the problem with that conversation right now is it's guaranteed that a good, if not large percent of what people are putting out there is just total bullshit and a waste of time. And it's not useful. If you're going to follow the case, if you're interested in the case, if you want to hear about the case, it's a good idea to stay away from speculating and guessing and sticking to what's in the public record, because that's what the judges look at. That's what the lawyers are looking at. That's what counts.
Definitely. Okay. One other thing about it is the fact that wait, hold on, what was I gonna say? Oh, okay. So the Fed showed up at my door. Basically, they wanted to issue a subpoena because they wanted to see the cease and desist that we received from Big U in regards to statements that Loose Cannon made on the podcast, in which he basically said that he believed that Big U had advanced knowledge that Nipsey Hussle was going to be murdered. So we got a cease and desist about that maybe about a year ago. We ended up taking the episode down because we didn't want to deal with the bullshit, and it did seem pretty far-fetched at that time. But when the feds show up looking for that cease and desist, they wanted a physical copy of that. They wanted to get a copy of that. That made a lot of people, myself included, kind of curious, like how much of an indicator is that Big U might actually be being investigated for the murder of Nipsey Hussle, or from your perspective, if he's got a federal RICO and he's being charged with a murder, et cetera, is like is subpoenaing a cease and desist kind of par for the course in that sort of situation?
Is both. 100%. You're subpoenaing that cease and desist no matter what. Let's say you've investigated the Nipsey Hussle angle, you're the feds, and you've come to the conclusion 1000% this guy had nothing to do with the Nipsey Hussle murder. You're still going to go investigate that cease and desist because you need that cease and desist because you're claiming that this guy has legitimate businesses that he uses as a front for his illegitimate businesses. And he uses those legitimate businesses to go and money to, wash his cash, to go get loans from the government, whatever he's using those legitimate businesses for. Well, what you're then doing is you have to prove everything about that business. And so if that business sent a cease and desist letter to a podcast, you got to go out and you got to get it. So I would say that it's absolutely par for the course. Now, are they also investigating him for Nipsey Hussle's murder? I mean, given what we know, given that there's an indictment, they would be silly to not have investigated him for Nipsey Hussle's murder. I mean, this is what happens. And a federal investigator hears a little story, and then they start kicking the can, and they start looking under here and looking under there. I'm sure the investigators have heard that story about Nipsey Hussle, and so I would guarantee that they've investigated it. Whether they've come to any conclusions, who knows?
Okay. And then my final question, so it's been noted by a lot of people that this case is kind of extraordinary just because there were multiple content creators, Whack 100 and Christopher Lovejoy specifically, who basically knew that this RICO was coming and had advanced information from the mother of the victim, because the mother actually told Whack on the phone that the police or federal agents, I guess, had confided in her and told her that when they examined the body of their son who had died, Rayshawn, that they found Big U's DNA under his fingernails. Now, and I guess they told the mom, hey, please don't repeat this to anyone, et cetera, et cetera. She ended up telling Whack. She asked him not to say anything. He did anyway. He said that he didn't really even think that it was a real thing at the time. But then it comes out that this is actually accurate. Is it, from your perspective, how out of the ordinary is that to have the feds or local police, whatever it was, providing the family of the victim with information about how there was going to be this indictment at some point in the future? Because this just kind of stands out to me as something I haven't really seen, where you have content creators making content about it. Like what you were saying, Big U seemed like he was taken off guard by it. But I mean, he had plenty of warning from his enemies who were making videos about it, who apparently had information from the cops that we didn't know about.
Well, I think you have to be very careful with information like that comes around, and you have to understand that, first off, the federal government is not interested in disclosing anything about their investigation ever.
Right.
And to the extent they disclose something about their investigation, they're going to disclose it widely and publicly. Now, if you hear something crazy like, there's a guy charged with murder and they found the DNA under the fingernails, and you hear that from sort of a rumor that, oh yeah, the victim's mom is saying that. Okay, is it anywhere in the court records? No. Okay, is it anywhere in the indictment? No. Is it anywhere in the probable cause affidavit? No. Okay, well then what benefit would the feds get from giving the mom that information? Well, one thing would be that the mom would then start spreading that. And by spreading it, you're out there moving with Big U. And what have you just heard? Big U's cooked. He's cooked. They got his DNA under the fingernails. So I would be very careful in putting any stock into information like that, because to me, if you have that type of information, it would be in the probable cause affidavit. It would be at that press conference where they said, today we've indicted Eugene, and our key evidence against him is we found his DNA on the body of a murder victim. So I'd be a little careful with that type of information, because that to me sounds like somebody could just be throwing that out there because it helps the hell out of the feds' case, whether it's true or not.
Right. Like you can kind of imagine that a sympathetic law enforcement officer might have just shared that with the mom to sort of let her know, like, hey, we actually are making movement in this investigation. But that being said, I haven't read the entire paperwork, but people who have read it told me that actually it does not say that Big U's DNA was found under his fingernails and it was inconclusive, something like that. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to imagine that the mom would have just made that up out of thin air, but who knows?
The feds could make it up though, right?
Okay, true.
I mean, if I'm an investigator, I have to tell you the truth and the absolute truth when we're in that room? I mean, I hear the story all the time. Hey, your friend's in the other room telling the whole story. What do you got for me?
Mm,
So the idea that, somebody just puts this out into the ether because it makes Big U look like he's cooked and it makes everybody more likely to flip on him, can't discount that.
right, definitely. Okay, Big Meech has been under fire. He's only been home for what has it been, 6 months, something like that, and he's apparently kind of smeared his name and a lot of the goodwill that he had been accumulating for the past couple of decades in the streets. What's your perspective on everything that's going on with that?
Did 50 Cent take down the post calling Big Meech rat? I thought I saw something that 50 took it down or something. If I had put something out there that Meech is a rat, I would take it down, because I don't know what people think. All I've heard is Tammy Cowan, Big Meech a rat, Tammy Cowan, Big Meech a rat. Okay. Have you heard that Big Meech was locked up in 2005 and he got out in 2025?
Mm,
That's 20 years, Adam.
right.
20 years. He was in solitary for the first couple of years. Okay, this man did a tremendous amount of time. Okay, so the basis for he's a rat. Let's talk about what happened here, because I'll tell you the whole story.
Sure.
There's nothing. There is nothing in this story
Wow, that's
that he is
interesting. Okay.
somebody a base. It's crazy. I can't believe people are calling this guy a rat. He gets picked up in 2005. Okay, and they hit him with the worst charge you can get for dealing drugs in America. And back in 2005, drugs were like, oh my God, you're the devil reincarnated. Over the years, we've seen the First Step Act and a lot of reform in and around penalties for drug dealers. He gets picked up in 2005. They do another sweep. They do the BMF takedown. There's like more than 100 people in the takedown. There's more than 50 people in his indictment. He does not plead to any violence. It's purely a drug and money laundering charge.
Okay.
Okay. Now he pleads. The judge gives him 30 years. Okay. The judge gave him 30 years. His lawyers fought like hell for like 4 years between the time he got his sentence, 2008, to about 2012. They filed 1,000,007 motions to try to get this man out, arguing all types of things. And we can get into all the stuff that they did that. It should be a full documentary. Now, when he finally loses all of those challenges, he sits in prison. And he sits in prison until about 2017, when we get the first bit of legislation changing the federal sentencing guidelines for drug violations. And at that time, his lawyers went to the judge and said, look, judge, we got new laws. Back in 2008, when you sentenced this guy, his guideline range suggested that you have to sentence him on the low end to 30 years, on the high end to life. You gave him 30. Today, with the new law, the low end would not have been 30 years, it would have been 27. Can we give him 27? Then a couple years later, we get another change in the drug laws. And when we got that next change in the drug laws, his lawyers went back and they said, hey, judge, remember we came to you, we said it shouldn't have been 30, it should have been 27. Well, they just filed that Congress just passed a new law. Now, it's not supposed to be 30, it's not supposed to be 27, it should be 24. The government agreed. The government said, yeah, we looked at this. They're absolutely right. If he was sentenced today instead of back in 2008 under the new federal sentencing guidelines for these drug crimes, his range would have been 24 to life. So we're okay with you giving him 24 if you want. Okay. So the government agrees that his sentence should have been 24. Okay. He was arrested in 2005. Okay. It's 2025. Okay. He did 20 years on a sentence that the government says should have been 24. There's good time credit. You could get like 50, 55, 57 days off each year of your sentence for good time. He could absolutely, in his 20-year bid, have earned the 4.5 years of good time and other stuff that he does, drug rehab, to get those 4 years kicked off. So the fact that a guy sentenced in 2008, serving time since 2005, gets his 30-year reduced to 27 down to 24.
Not that out of the ordinary. Yeah, very easy to explain it without the snitching narrative, right?
There's no where is the snitching narrative come from? He sat for 20 years. The filings are all, I can't believe because you asked me, I looked at this and I said, oh my God, what are they doing to this man? Can you imagine serving 20 years and then coming out based on changes of congressional law, and the whole world wants to call you a snitch? If people snitch, call them a snitch. I have no problem calling snitches snitches. But what's the basis?
Right. I mean, it seems like a lot of people, it's always seemed kind of convoluted to me, but they believe that Tammy must have been basically snitching on his behalf, where he was feeding her information in order to, help the feds out or whatever like that. You don't put any kind of stock in that, in those allegations?
There's no basis for anything but a very simple story. Guy got 30 years, okay? Then the law changed and the government agreed he should have got 24, and he got out in 20.
Right.
Well, where's the snitching? What does Tammy Cowan have to do with anything? Everybody agrees the 30 years was rough for drugs. 30 years it was a lot of drugs. The indictment said he moved like $270 million worth of cocaine, like 500 keys all over the country. All right, but it was just drugs. How much do you think they give people for drugs? They gave him 30, they knocked it down to 24. With good time, he got out in 20. This whole Tammy Cowan narrative, unless people have some facts that they want to explain, they should take down their posts.
Wow, that's interesting. So you think that 50 Cent did take it down? Because that would be pretty unprecedented.
I'll look on this call. I saw it's like, oh, 50's Instagram. Maybe somebody on your end can check. 50's Instagram has scrubbed all the Big Meech rap posts. I thought I saw that.
Really? Because I mean, he is someone who just sort of posts so much random bullshit on his Instagram that I guess I wouldn't be surprised if he were to clean it up from time to time and delete stuff. But if he deleted all of the posts about Meech specifically, that would be at least a little bit damning.
Yeah, man, this guy, he caught 30 years on the kingpin charge for moving keys. And to me, I'm shocked that people in the industry and people in the press have decided that they can go out and call him a rat. And I'm shocked that he hasn't fought back, that maybe he's probably just above it. He's probably from a different time where he doesn't want to go on the internet and do all this nonsense where he's just like, doesn't move like that. But I'm shocked he hasn't fought back.
I mean, a lot of people are speculating that his mental health might not be the best at this time period. And like a lot of people suggesting that he might have been on drugs while he was in prison. They think that he doesn't necessarily seem like the old Meech when they see clips of him and everything like that. But have you ever heard of anyone being successfully sued for defamation because someone was calling them a snitch? Like, is that the kind of thing that you could successfully sue for?
I mean, I've never heard it, but in the context of Meech, I mean, my God, I can't think of a more perfect case, because when he re-enters society right now in 2025, he has a reputation and he has a role in the entertainment industry. And there's plenty of earning potential for this man. I imagine that there's lots of offers from lots of people to trade on his reputation as this big time gangster who's now out and can tell you about the world from his point of view. And then to go out and call him a snitch, well, first off, that's an objective fact. You're either a snitch or you're not. And so that's something that if somebody calls me a snitch and I'm not a snitch, and my reputation is such that I'm trying to capitalize on my status as this gangster who did his time and came out, shit, I would sue for defamation.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to prove damages. I mean, I'm sure he could create a million opportunities that he thought that he was going to have that he isn't having as a result of a lot of this bad publicity and everything. So, damn, that's crazy. But I mean, there was, I don't know if you have any insight into this, but like Boosie went on Vlad and basically said that when that Big Meech Welcome Home concert got canceled, Boosie claims that the feds showed up backstage a couple hours before the concert and they shut it down, which was kind of shocking to people because that makes some people think like, oh, okay, what particular interest might the feds have in Big Meech doing a Welcome Home concert? But I guess,
Oh, huge.
yeah.
They'd have huge interest. He's on supervised release.
Okay.
So there's serious terms there about who he can affiliate and associate with. And then moreover, this case was always a case that has national attention in terms of, for the federal government, what this was a takedown of one of, if not the biggest and most notorious drug enterprises in the history of the United States of America. And that's always been at the lawyers, you know, at the tip of the lips of the lawyers whenever they're talking about this case to the judge, whenever sentencing happened, appeals happened, whenever there's any argument about anything, the feds were always very quick to point out, Your Honor, we're talking about a guy who ran an organization that was moving 500 keys, market value of $270 million in cocaine. It doesn't get any bigger than this. And so what you do here reverberates throughout society in terms of public opinion, public perception. And so I think absolutely the feds would come and say, you doing a welcome home? With who? What are these lyrics? Who's going to be saying what? Is this guy here? You know, he's a gang member. And for somebody like Meech, who got out on that charge on supervised release, to me, that makes perfect sense. I remember what they did with BG, right? They went to him and said, hey, you can't be making music with this person, or you can't be saying this in a rap song because they're on supervised release.
Definitely. I mean, I guess a lot of people just thought it was strange that the feds would show up at the concert a couple hours before it took place, given that, you know, every expense that they were going to have to pay was essentially already paid. And presumably they were going to have to refund a ton of the tickets to the fans and everything like that. But I guess if they wanted to make it as painful and as difficult as possible for somebody like Meech, that's probably how they would do it. They wouldn't give him 2 weeks notice.
Yeah, I'm sure they. I don't think they were really considering how much pain it would cause Meech. In the Fed's eyes, Meech ran one of the worst criminal organizations in the history of this country. They owe him no favors, and so tough loss for Meech is all they would care about. I don't think they'd care.
And so that's not, from your perspective, that's not really like that out of the ordinary for them to then continue to have an interest in him for the rest of his life and to do things that seem to the public at least to be antagonistic and, you know, essentially designed to make his life out of the feds as difficult as possible.
Yeah, I don't think that's out of the ordinary.
These guys. I mean, okay, can you just, as more of a general thing, I was watching a video about somebody's case the other day, and I guess there's like a practice where someone will do their state time and won't be hit with their federal charges until the very, very end of them doing state time in jail. Then they'll get hit with the Fed charges and have to do additional time. That to me just seems like the shadiest, grimiest possible thing that I could imagine. But it also seems like this has become kind of normalized.
It's warfare, Adam. That's all it is. I don't owe you anything. And so if your lawyer is dumb enough to not realize that you have other offices that could go after you, and if he's not smart enough to realize that right now when I'm negotiating with the feds, I need to pull those people in and get the feds to go call that office and say, hey, I want this guy on this plea. As part of this plea, I need you guys to come in and also agree that you're not going to go after him for this. That's just, it's warfare. In Meech's case, Meech had another charge in Texas. And so he was indicted up in the Eastern District of Michigan, and he had another case pending in Texas. And when he took his plea in Texas, his lawyers were when he took his plea in Michigan, his lawyers were very good and they were on top of it. And they made sure to wrap that into the plea agreement to say that, hey, even though the Eastern District of Michigan and even though the judge up in the Eastern District of Michigan doesn't have jurisdiction down in Texas, we have nevertheless confirmed with the prosecutors down in Texas and the prosecutors up here in Michigan that this is going to be a comprehensive deal. And that when this plea gets entered and when he gets charged up here, we're going to drop the stuff down there. And so the fact that that's happening is not on the feds. It's on your lawyer. Okay? Because your lawyer should have told you that, bro, you're taking a plea on this, but I got nothing for the state. And then you can go to your lawyer and say, okay, well, what are we going to do about that? And then your lawyer can say, well, I can talk to the feds about bringing the state prosecutors to the table, and we try to just work this out, one and done.
Okay, so a competent lawyer would be able to sort of predict this sort of thing.
Yeah, or at least preview it for you and let you know that, hey, I'm getting you off this Fed case. Says nothing about the state case. The state case is coming. We're going to have to fight it.
Did you pay any attention to Boosie, who caught a gun charge while being on probation and in San Diego, and then as soon as he beat it, he was sort of recharged. He did like a celebratory Vlad TV interview, and then was recharged by the feds within days. Did you see this?
I saw it a little bit. Shit, I wouldn't have done the celebratory interview. What did the same office recharge him, or did they get him on a state case?
I think it was he beat the state case or had it dismissed, something along those lines, and then the feds swooped in and recharged him. And he's currently, I believe, sort of petitioning Trump for a pardon, which I don't know how likely that is.
Yeah, I could try in 3 years when it's re-election time.
Yeah, he seems like he likes to do favors for rappers when it's beneficial to him. So we just got to get Boosie on his radar.
Hey, Biden too. You know, Biden pardoned Meech's brother. So Meech's brother took a plea at the same time, and then Biden granted a grant of clemency to Meech's brother. Meech's brother got out during COVID on compassionate release, and he was serving his time at home. And then Biden gave him clemency to just clear off all his time.
Crazy. Okay, so currently the United States, our economy is being rocked by these tariffs that are being proposed by Trump, or not even just proposed, but I guess instituted. It seems like it happens almost immediately. But they're predicting that the iPhone might end up costing $2,300 if these tariffs actually take place. Trump is seemingly trying to sort of remake the American economy to be able to do the sort of manufacturing that China has so unbelievably locked down over the years. What's your viewpoint on where the country's at in that regard?
I have two takeaways on this. One, it's remarkable how much power Trump has been able to suck up into the presidency when you think about it, because I never knew an American president was this powerful. I don't think Trump ever knew an American president was this powerful his first term. And I think he came back and he said, how do I give myself as much power as possible? And they look at this tariff thing and they go, well, apparently we can just run the whole economy, because at some point the Constitution said that presidents should be in charge of foreign affairs. Well, at that point, we didn't buy everything from everybody in the world. Today, now that everybody just deals with everybody and one phone gets made with parts from 40 different countries, this idea that the American president can just single-handedly set tariffs because it's foreign, that shit makes no sense to me. But anyway, if you look at what he did, this man has tons of power. I mean, corporations around the world overnight went from, there's a new president to, can we get that guy on the line? What can he do for us? What does he need from me?
Right.
'Cause I'll give him anything he wants, because apparently he can set the price of my product right now in the country. So that is a master stroke from somebody who's president and wants to have power. He's done it. I imagine people are lining up outside the White House doors, Ford, GM, Tesla, everybody, all the big companies. Hey, can we get out of this? Can we get an exception? The other thing that's happening here, which is fair to him and his advisors, is that something has to happen in this country about the fact that we're not the top dog anymore in terms of being able to go around the world selling shit. And so this idea that, hey, global trade is really helpful for us, I think a lot of American businesses look at that and say, nah, not really, because I can go to Africa, I could go to the Middle East, I could go to the Southeast Asia. And 20 years ago when I went there, they were like, cool, I'll take 20. Today, I go there and they say, I'm getting my shit from China. It's better, it's cheaper. And you know what? I never liked you anyway. And that's like a real problem for our country. And I don't think anybody's actually sort of really been able to understand how we deal with that problem. I mean, these tariffs. So Trump put a 25% tariff on Chinese cars in his first term back in like 2017. I kid you not, had Trump not done that, Chinese automakers would rule the country. I mean, you would see nothing but Chinese cars flooding your entire American economy. Whether that's a good thing or bad thing, I don't know. But 100%, the number one car maker in America today would be BYD if Trump didn't impose a 25% tariff back in 2017. Biden continued those tariffs because he saw dollars to donuts that we're if we don't have them because all of the Chinese products are going to replace the American products in our market. Okay. Biden is then thinking like, what the hell can I do about these people? Like, how do I deal with these monstrous economic companies that can just build stuff for so much cheaper and so much better than my companies? And he came up with nothing essentially. All he came up with was the semiconductor ban. This idea that, all right, well, we've got the Taiwan manufacturing foundries, and we're going to make sure that China can't get chips and high-powered semiconductors, and that will be how we try to keep that keep them from steamrolling us in the world of global trade. Is that effective? Who knows? Trump came in and he said, okay, we need to just get crazy and we need to just do it across the board, everywhere, obscene tariffs. And the idea, to me, seems to be this idea of withdrawing from the world in a way that makes the most sense for us, so that we focus on like, I don't know what the idea is, but I certainly see the two things. One, he's amassed a ton of power for himself. Two, he's dealing with what is a legitimate problem, which is how do you compete with China and other countries on global trade when they make stuff so much cheaper and faster? What's the end game? Shit, who knows? I'll tell you one thing that I know for damn sure. Rich people don't give a big companies don't give a Bro, if I'm making $3 million a year and you're telling me that, oh, tariffs are going to cut into my 401k, I got like 10 million in my 401k. You know, that's just, and I'm never going to withdraw it. It's just going to rebound. So the real storyline on the tariffs is, you know, there's plenty of reasonable conversations to be had, and there's real issues that people are tackling and this and that. But here's the bottom line. Poor folks, middle class folks will take it on the chin because the people who run this place don't give a about them. Small businesses will take it on the chin because the people who run this place don't care about them.
I know, but it's fascinating to see because obviously that's Trump's base. The poorest Americans, the poorest states are really the base that have elected Trump twice now. But it's also kind of hard to imagine America becoming more like China when you see what the lifestyle of workers is like out there and how they build these giant factories, that people live at the factories, that they work these absolutely insane hours for amounts of money that the average American just is not going to work for. And it's just kind of hard to imagine our economy being remade to sort of match this level of output.
Well, that's the scary storyline, and a lot of people are out there on the internet talking about it. You know, Dave Chappelle just did the special on Netflix. We don't want Chinese jobs. What the hell are you bringing Chinese jobs to America for? I don't want to make Nikes. I want to wear Nikes. That was Chappelle's bit, and it's spot on. Nobody wants to do those jobs. I don't think those jobs are coming. Okay, so if nobody wants to do those jobs and nobody's going to do those jobs at those wages, then we have to kind of assume that that's not what's really happening here. That we're not actually imposing huge tariffs on these other countries so that their plants don't sell to us, and now we make manufacturing plants in here and they sell to us. I mean, that's a nice concept, but I don't think that's happening. That doesn't make any sense to me, for the reason Chappelle said and for the reason you pointed out. No American wants those jobs. So what's really happening here? Shit, who knows? But the fact that that's not it, and that seems to be what all of his economic advisors are going out onto Sunday talk shows and talking about, it just tells you that they're lying to your face. There's no world where we're going back to fucking manufacturing iPhones in America with plants full of American workers making a living wage that allows them to provide for their families. That they're selling you an absolute pipe dream.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, it's easy to imagine the scenario in which our reliance on China for everything in our society is very problematic. I mean, we all kind of saw that during COVID when it was extremely difficult to get masks, and we figured out that there was nobody manufacturing those masks in America. I don't know. I mean, it does seem like this is a problem that needs to be addressed. I've seen people talk about how if AI and drone manufacturing, et cetera, is all being handled by the Chinese, then we're essentially ourselves, because we get into a real serious conflict with them, we're just not going to be able to, maintain our current quality of life.
So I would be careful with the line of thinking that says that, oh, it's really dangerous for them to make all of our stuff. I mean, is it? Don't we need them to make all of our stuff because we can't make it? Isn't what's really dangerous this concept that, okay, if they make our stuff and we give them $1 for it, pair of Nikes, okay, and then the American consumer buys the stuff, and the American consumer gives the corporation $100 for it, pair of Nikes. Or the Nike example should be 10 and 100. That's really a more accurate
Okay.
ratio. So the factory in China paid $10 to make it. Okay. The American consumer paid $100 to buy it. Okay. Now, where is the toxic element, Adam, in this equation? Is it the Chinese manufacturer? No. Is it the American consumer who's working hard and putting up $100? No, he's good for the economy. He's being a consumer. The toxicity is in that $90 spread, which is going, people should be able to figure out at this point that $90 spread is going to all the middlemen, all the financiers, all the people who loan Nike obscene amounts of money so that they can become bigger and bigger and bigger, to the detriment of all the other manufacturers who are happy to make a pair of sneakers here in America for $20 and sell them for 25. There's plenty of those folks. Those folks don't exist anymore because people in fancy New York City offices run the numbers and say Nike's a billion-dollar corporation. We're going to give them $2 billion more, and they're going to become a $5 billion corporation. Nobody realizes that what's really toxic here is not using cheap labor in foreign countries. That's not the problem. The problem is allowing American companies to make these spreads on these products and allowing the concentration of these companies to proliferate so that there's only one or two companies, and that spread gets even higher and even higher and even higher. And I think what you're seeing with the tariff thing and what you're seeing from the America First movement is that spread has been globalized. That spread is, there are people sort of around the world making that $90 spread, Europeans, Chinese, but it's about those folks. It's about those folks who are capitalizing $90 on a $10 product. I don't think the problem is the cheap labor that we're using to make this stuff.
Right. Well, we'll see how much time Trump has to try to pull this off before America starts turning on him, which a lot of people are so ideologically committed to him that it's kind of hard to imagine them tucking their tail and admitting that a more normal set of policies would have been a lot more comfortable for them, especially after just all these years of them convincing us that what Biden and the Democrats were doing to our economy was so disastrous. It's kind of hard to imagine them turning their backs on them, but at the same time, you could imagine that if this doesn't change itself up at some point, that we might see some of that.
So that used to give me hope, this idea that, oh, well, if he does so much extreme, if he goes so far in one direction, there will be a backlash. But I don't think so. I mean, I think what the last couple of years of my life has taught me is that there is no going too far. You just go as far as you want. And if you've got the power, if you've got the money, I mean, 3 years from now, at the end of this Trump presidency, I think you're going to have a world where people who dissent or people who have like the wherewithal to say, hey, that's wrong, that's a stupid policy, they're going to be gone. They're not going to be there. People who have platforms where they speak on issues that are of public importance, the algorithm's going to kill them. Okay? People who have businesses, people who are making money, people who are investing, those people are going to continue to do what they've been doing without a care in the world for what's happening with Trump's policies. And 3 years from today, you're going to have a completely new government, a completely new economy, one where, like, you think it's bad now. It's like, it's hard to compete with these companies now. It's hard to speak truth to power now. Give them 3 years of Trump. Give them 3 years of AI. Let them and tool up with their robots. Let them be able to know everything about everyone in real time, all at once. And then imagine how hard it's going to be to stand up and speak truth to power. You had the Democratic Party, and people were telling Democrats left and right, bro, you got to stop the wars. Just stop the wars. Just put a little pause on the wars, just a little, and it'll be okay. You'll win. But look what happened. They didn't. And that's got to tell you something, which is that the voice of the people is irrelevant. And this idea that Trump is going to go so far and there'll be a backlash, I don't see it. Instead, I see the societies of our future, right? I see people walking through train stations. I see sensors. I see advertisements. I see the AI reading our thoughts and classifying us and judging us. And I see that for this world, and there's no stopping it.
I, for one, welcome our new robot overlords. Okay. What are the other topics that you really wanted to hit while we're on here? Because I got a bunch of stuff, but I know there's a few things you studied up on.
So this is gonna be a little controversial, but I think I'm back to Team Drake. I think like I was like really upset to hear that a rapper was claiming defamation in a rap battle, right? Like that, to me, that's stupid. Like, wait a second. You lost a rap battle because, you know, the songs weren't as good as the other guys. And now you're suing and saying, well, one of those guys' songs defames me. And I thought that was dumb. And then my cousin, my nephew, he was asking me to go buy some clothes. And I was like, okay, you know, what brands are we talking about? And OVO came up, and he had this look on his face where it's like awkward. And he's feeling like kind of sheepish about talking about it. And it was the angle.
Right.
And then I thought about that some more, and I thought about when that battle was happening, and really when every battle is happening. And then, you know, Drake had that, I think he had like the book bag or something, and they had like, oh, I got this dirt on him. And you were always wondering like, hey, what's the next angle going to be? What dirt is going to come out? What's he going to say this time? Is he going to call him, you know, a bitch? What's he going to do? And he came out with the, you know, that was the centerpiece of that song. The song was an absolute bop. But the centerpiece of that song was A minor. And is that fair? Is that like even remotely in the vicinity of fair? Like, you could say a lot of stuff about Drake. I've said a lot of stuff about Drake. I don't think there's ever a world where calling Drake a adds up.
No, definitely not. If anything, this whole situation has proven to us within a shadow of a doubt that Drake is apparently quite clearly not a sexual predator. When Diddy got charged by Cassie, all of a sudden we see hundreds of lawsuits come out. Drake has been smeared as some sort of sex pest by the one of the biggest rappers in the world. We've seen almost nothing come up in that regard.
Yeah, the NFL bleeped at the Super Bowl halftime show.
Right.
And the reason why they bleeped is listen to the word. It's crazy. It's crazy. Like when you hear Not Like Us, it might kind of roll off you for a second. But when you look back on that story, that's pretty aggressive. And so in the Drake lawsuit, I will say, I've rethought my thinking on that a little bit. Now, Not Like Us was a bop. He got crushed in that rap battle, but the use of, he's going after UMG on it heavy. That lawsuit is advancing. It started with this pre-petition thing or whatever, but now there's a defamation case. There's 3 counts: defamation, then there's a count for like harassment, and then there's a count for violating New York's general business law, basically engaging in unfair, deceptive business practices. The defamation count, Universal has moved to dismiss that count. A motion to dismiss in federal court basically says, judge, assume everything that this guy wrote in his complaint is true, okay? Even if it's all true, we're not liable because, and Universal gets into a couple arguments. Their big argument is fact versus, they call it hyperbole or like puffery opinion. That there's facts, which you can sue for defamation, like, I don't know, if I called you a, and then there's hyperbole, which you can't sue for defamation, like if I called you a rap battle. I don't know about that. I don't think there's clear-cut case law on this. I think this is one of those situations where a lot of stuff happens in the world. Rarely does it happen between two people with unlimited money. And when you have a situation like this happen with two people with unlimited money, they're going to go to court and they're going to fight it out in the most detailed and comprehensive way possible. And then you force judges and lawyers to really look at it and draw the line of what you can and cannot say. This idea that Universal Music Group has that, hey, if it's a rap battle, everything is kosher. I don't know about that. I think there's stuff you can say in the context of rap that's going to be considered defamatory. So what's happening in this case, we're going to get some real information here very soon. So I believe the motion to dismiss is being briefed. There was a lot of press reports about, oh, discovery is going forward. That doesn't mean shit. When you file a lawsuit, the other side files a motion to dismiss, you might then go and say, hey, just because they filed that motion, it doesn't mean the lawsuit should stop. We should still have discovery. I should still be able to see Kendrick's contract. I should still be able to see the deal with Universal that if they with Spotify, if they paid any money to artificially inflate these numbers or to put it out there more in the algorithm. So that discovery process, Drake's lawyers will want to go forward. And what happened, like I think 2 weeks ago, and the press was all over it. Oh, Drake's lawsuit is going to go forward with discovery. Happens all the time. This happens all the time. One person files a lawsuit, other person files a motion to dismiss. Judge says discovery can go forward. It means absolutely nothing. What you're going to hear, I think it's in June. There's going to be a hearing on the motion to dismiss. And when that hearing happens, the lawyers are going to be in court. I'm definitely putting it on my calendar, and I'll be there. And you're going to hear from the judge on what they think. And the judge will probably issue a written opinion shortly thereafter. And if the judge says something like, hey, rap battle or no rap battle, that statement is actionable for defamation, yo, it's going to be on, because the amount of damages and just there's other angles to this lawsuit too. So I definitely think the defamation angle is very important. And then you have this general business law angle, which is Drake's claim that this company uses all these illegal business practices to make one artist look bigger than he really is. This lawsuit is very real. And my take on it is it was pretty messed up for Kendrick Lamar to call him with no basis.
I agree. But that being said, the obvious argument that a lot of people make in response is that Drake made a variety of false allegations against Kendrick Lamar as well. He said that his manager, Dave Free, had fathered one of his children, most notably. I mean, does that not come into play? Because a lot of times when we see people attacking each other back and forth, not even necessarily in a rap battle, but, you know, this sort of tit for tat online argument, podcast war type thing that we're just sort of used to seeing, it usually feels to us like if one side is throwing fuel on the fire, then it would be difficult for them to then sue. But I mean, the allegation does seem kind of unique in a way. It's uniquely career damaging. I mean, even if we found out that one of Kendrick's kids wasn't his, I mean, really, like, what the does that change? That doesn't really change that much. It would be a strange revelation, but I mean, does that sort of back and forth nature, from your perspective, not really even come into play in this kind of situation?
Well, it's definitely going to come into play. I think the lawyers will argue that heavily, that this freestyle battle devolved into just sort of, you know, baseless allegations being thrown around. That was the context in which they were battling. That it wasn't a battle in the pure sense. It actually, as the battle progressed, was a battle of people just making shit up and saying anything they wanted about the other person. And so everybody kind of understood that. I don't know. I don't know that people who observed that battle, I don't know people who simply heard Not Like Us have any of that context. I do think a lot of people left that battle and left that song with this idea that Drake is that again, that shit don't sit right with me. We're like, where do you get off saying that about somebody? They're real. It's like fucked up.
Yeah. And okay, but one thing that I always run into is I'll be having this argument with people, and they'll say, well, there was the video of Drake where he brought this girl who ended up being 17 on stage at a concert. It was a long time. It was like 15 years ago, 12 years ago, something like that. And he kissed her, and then realized she was underage or whatever, and they use that to suggest like, no, look, he actually is a. Which, from my perspective, it's like, number one, that is not what that word means. A, someone who's attracted to children, not somebody who's right at the cusp of being of age. So, number one, that word would be being used completely arbitrarily there. And then, in addition to that, it just seems like that. I feel like if you have to rely on that, you're basically admitting that your argument has a very weak foundation, because that's not, really what that accusation tends to entail typically.
100% agree. At the same time, I would point out that that actually really stands in UMG's favor from a legal perspective.
They might end up making that argument in court, yeah.
Yeah, because and that was the angle that I saw, that's the only way to defend this, that he's out there with girls and sometimes they might be underage and he doesn't know. And I saw the thing about him kissing the 17-year-old at the concert. And I think that's a credible argument in court, and I think that argument will have legs in court. And I think you could definitely defend it and say, I called him a because he's kissing 17-year-olds on TV. And we all know that in the state that, I don't know this to be true, but it's possible that in the state that they were in, 17 is below the age of consent. And so from a legal perspective, I think you could use that type of position and cover your ass. In the court of public opinion, that's a weak position. But then again, in the court of public opinion, you're defending yourself against a defamation case in a rap battle. So, I mean, there's no winners here. This just became a total trash fest.
A lot of people, their opinion is that this lawsuit, while it may have legs and it may be successful, that it is so inherently against the spirit of hip hop that Drake has committed some sort of grave sin against hip hop. Does that opinion appeal to you at all?
It would, but for the fact that hip hop is a universal music group. I don't know why, and a couple other labels, and I don't know why. But they are. And so if he's going to go after them, that should be part of the culture.
Yeah. I mean, on one hand, I could see that argument. He does look like a little bit of a sore loser. But that being said, seeing him soar to the top of the charts while suing his label suggests to me that the damage that might have been done to Drake's image as a result of him participating in this lawsuit, a lot of that damage has already been done. And it's not like more damage is going to be done because of that. If anything, as we get deeper and deeper into this, Drake might end up looking like more and more of the good guy as he's able to expose more and more things that UMG does behind the scenes. Because as someone who's been up close and personal with these labels, for sure, they are buying tons of fake plays on albums, on songs, and it's the kind of thing that really does need to be exposed. And even though it might be being done for selfish reasons, it does feel like a lot of good could come from this. And it's like as much as like hip hop is this thing that we all want to protect and revere, we're not really talking about that. We're talking about the dastardly deeds that these massive labels do in order to make their artists appear like they're bigger than they are, or even to do battle with other artists that they want to sort of, push down and put into a less advantageous position.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that he took a hit initially, but in the long run, he could come out golden from this. I mean, if he keeps dropping songs that are charting the way his last album charted, and if he continues to drop music that resonates with people, all will be forgiven. And certainly, he's shown if there's one thing he can do, he can drop.
Right, because like when I first heard that album, the Drake album, I didn't necessarily hear the hits. Like I think there was so many boring songs on it that I didn't really like notice that there was a couple of songs that really were standouts. But the fact that that song is doing so well, the fact that that album sold so well, and the fact that it's not even a real formal official Drake release, it was a collaborative project with another artist. I mean, that really says a lot. He had about as much damage as you could ever expect somebody to take done to their career. And, typically when that happened, like Ja Rule didn't get another number one after 50 Cent destroyed his career. There's a lot of artists like this. When they take that mortal wound, they're not able to do the thing where they go number one again. And the fact that he's been able to do so, to me, suggests that Kendrick's whole plan didn't really work out, and if the standard by which we judge both of these acts going forward is can they make really, really popular music? Well, Kendrick hasn't necessarily shown us that he can do that outside of when he's attacking Drake. So he still has something to prove. Drake really hasn't had a whole lot of W's come from being willing to go to war with Kendrick. So I do kind of feel like at the end of the day that this might sort of end with Drake looking even more bulletproof than he appeared before.
Yo, can you imagine if he takes UMG all the way and recovers like a major verdict against UMG? I think he'll own music.
Oh my God. I mean, like that reminds me of I don't know if you ever paid attention to the Nick Denton situation with Gawker and Hulk Hogan and everything like that. Where basically like Hulk Hogan was able to, in partnership with Peter Thiel, take down Gawker because they had exposed Peter Thiel as a homosexual. And they he really found the perfect person to sue. They got a judgment that was so big that it actually took Gawker out. And I feel like in a lot of ways, this is kind of the music equivalent of that if it actually does go the whole way.
Yo, I could see it. I wonder if Ja Rule is calling his lawyer and be like, yo, you think they were conspiring to get me? Hey,
25 years ago, I was defamed, and I want my repercussions. Yes. Amazing. Okay, yeah.
All right, what else? We can talk about Melly.
Melly, yeah. What are your thoughts on Melly? It feels like he's almost like been forgotten by a big chunk of hip hop because he's been dealing with this for 7 years.
So Melly's going to go to trial again in September. And the big issue right now that has been made public is that the state, Broward County, is trying to bring criminal charges against one of his lawyers. Not sure what the basis of the charge was. There's some speculation of witness tampering. And the judge is going viral with all these great, speeches from the bench where he's just like, calling the state out on their bullshit, which is that, hey, you might have a case against this lawyer, but she's currently his lawyer and he's on for double murder. He's facing the death penalty. At this point, he's already had one mistrial. He's been locked up for over 5 years. This is very important, state. This is like the most important thing that could ever happen in my courtroom, a double murder life penalty after a mistrial trial. So can we get on with it here? Either charge Melly's lawyer, Raven Liberty, or don't. But you need to do it because he needs to decide whether he wants to keep her as his lawyer. If you tell him that she's being charged with this, he can then consider it and discharge her and say, I don't want her as a lawyer anymore. Instead, what I can't have happen, this is the judge talking, I can't have this trial getting started in September and August 31st, you go and release an indictment against her. And then he's going to come to me and say, oh, shit, I need a new lawyer or whatever. And the state is basically just playing hardball with the judge, and it's great. The clips are awesome. You should check them out on YouTube. And the state's just like, yeah, no, judge, you're wrong. We're not doing it. And then that sort of has been kind of playing out. So we'll see. I mean, man, imagine you're facing double murder. You're going up for a second trial. You're facing life. And then you hear days before your trial that your lawyer just got indicted for witness tampering in your case.
Right. No, it's insane. But okay, is Melly going to have any kind of repercussions against the state if it turns out that he just spent 7 years behind bars for something that he eventually got off on, even though it obviously probably caused irreparable damage to his career?
Nah. A lot of times what happens in these cases is, somebody claims, hey, you locked me up and you had, you violated my rights because I've been locked for 7 years and I got a not guilty. The standard of law is different. So you have to prove that basically the prosecutor acted with malicious intent, like they were doing this on purpose to you. And the prosecutor's just going to say, what do you want me to do? We did an investigation. The investigators investigated. Your cell phone came up like this. This witness came up and said this. So they're going to have plenty of reasons for why they bought this case. They're going to have plenty of reasons for why they took it to trial. I mean, at the first trial, it was a mistrial. It wasn't even a not guilty. So the idea that you can hold the state responsible for holding somebody for this long and having two trials, there's no basis for it. The state is simply doing what they're doing within the confines of the law. It sucks. It's unfortunate. Trial should happen sooner,
Mm.
but I don't see any chance of him going after them were he to get out.
Practically, do you believe that our system takes this long because it needs to take this long? Or is this really kind of just a result of all the bureaucracy and bullshit that has come to sort of encompass the legal system? Like, if you could redesign the court system from scratch, do you think it would still take 7 years to try a situation like this?
Well, I imagine Elon Musk is working on redesigning our court system from scratch.
We could save a lot of
I
money.
don't.
That's a good idea.
I think he's going to, man. I don't think it's going to take this long in the future. I think practically it takes this long right now because of resources.
Mm.
That's all we're talking about here. I mean, it's just resources. It's how much manpower, time, salaries you can pay, overtime hours. And so, yeah, man, this shit takes long. It is what it is. But I see a future very soon where judges, lawyers, empowered by artificial intelligence, setting calendars, reviewing things, summarizing things, this shit's going to start moving a lot faster, I think.
Yeah, it just seems like there's something so illogical about being charged with anything and then having it take, maybe 10% of your entire life to even get you a verdict on if you did that thing or not. Like, ironically, not murder, but a lot of charges, almost everything that he could have been charged with, he already would have done enough time that by the end of the trial that he would have basically done effectively the amount of time that he would eventually be sentenced to. Now, obviously not for a double murder, but I mean, shit, 7 years is a nice head start on any sentence that they're going to hand him.
10% of your life. I like that. Have you been thinking more about life in these chunks?
Well, being 40, yeah, it is kind of depressing to realize, like, oh shit, I'm probably past the halfway point. That's depressing. Yeah.
Have you seen that? There's this influencer I like. His name is Sahil Bloom.
I don't think
And
so.
he wrote a book. I think it's called like The 5 Types of Wealth or something. It's not a gratuitous plug. I read it. It's really cool. And he thinks about he sort of phrases life a lot in those ways. I think one of the chapters was like, if you're 40 and your parents are 70 and you guys live like a 2-hour drive away from each other, you'll probably see your parents 13 more times before they die.
Mm.
And is that sufficient to you? And how do you feel about how wealthy you are when you consider your life in that way? And it's an interesting way to think about your life and sort of percentages and just kind of raw facts, bro. Like you have a lot of thoughts running into your head, but just look at the numbers a little bit and you can start quantifying, how many times you're going to have with this person, how many times you're going to get to go and do that, how many trips you're actually going to take. It's crazy.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things that you don't realize when it's the last time that you did it. Like there was a day where you and your friends, when you were in elementary school or junior high or high school, you all went out and did something, had a good time, and that was the last time that you and your friends ever did that thing. And you had no clue. And even for things you love doing, I might have already gone out and rode BMX bikes for the last time, that might have already taken place. I'm not really sure yet at this point. But there's a lot of things like that where you just don't really understand how finite things are until the end. And yeah, I've heard that thought experiment about your parents a lot, and I always try to think about that with my kid too. It's like, this could be. Well, I'm at the point now where I get to see her every day and hang out with her. Once she's 18, once she's 21, once she's 30, I mean, how often do you see him? My kid is still young enough. It's super cute. She'll tell me, hey, even when I'm a grown up, I still want to live with you. I still want to live around the corner from you so we can still see each other all the time, which is like the cutest thing in the world, but also kind of depressing because the reality is that she doesn't know how unlikely us spending huge amounts of time together when she's older actually is.
Yeah, man. You gotta take up that time with your kids. I got kids and my kids look at me and I'm like the most important thing in the world to them. And and every day I know that's getting less and less and they learn more about the world and the world takes more importance and my importance is waning. We're all fighting father time, man.
No, for sure. Okay, I forget. Was there anything else that we had scheduled that we were going to discuss here? Because I know you got your own kind of list over there.
Young Thug.
Oh, yeah, yeah. How you feeling about all that? They were trying to lock him up. They decided that his statements on social media were not enough to have him sent back to jail.
So I'll give the prosecutors a little bit of credit for what they tried to do, but this was the wrong case, and they made some bad precedent, because what they were really trying to do, the headline that everybody saw is Young Thug posted that an investigator is a liar.
Right.
But that's not what they were after. What they were trying to do is they were trying to criminalize the comments section. And they were trying to hold Thug responsible for what people commented on his post. And you know what? That concept has some legs. That if you caught a gang charge and you're out on probation, maybe you have to be mindful of your comment section. But what happened in this case, wrong case. These people have no credibility. The judge already thinks that they're liars. The judge looked at them and said, you guys bought a kingpin charge against this guy, and you're letting him walk with time served. I mean, if he got a bond, you would have let him walk with no jail time? It's a kingpin charge for life. What the? So this is the wrong case to try to go and criminalize the comment section, because you can see what Judge Whitaker didn't even hold a hearing. She didn't even bring them into court. She issued a 1-paragraph opinion order saying denied. And so, I mean, she told you what she thinks of it. And that's, that case was a real shit show, and bad on the prosecutors, because you don't want to get denied like that. And now the next time, anybody watching this, if your PO or somebody's giving you shit about what somebody said in the comments, bring them back to Fulton County, Georgia. There's a reported opinion there where the government tried to criminalize comments and say that, hey, what somebody commented under your post is a violation for your probation. And now we have a judge in Fulton County saying, that shit, no, get out of here.
Well, it's really interesting because obviously it's not a legal thing, but on Twitch and various other platforms, I've seen it over the years. I think Twitch primarily. I don't think YouTube will actually do this to you, but I think on Twitch, let's say that you run a stream in which, you are relatively measured and you say things that are not so provocative, etc. But let's say that like 90% of the people commenting on your video are spewing hate speech and using the N-word and saying terrible things. Ultimately, Twitch is going to hold you accountable for that, and they expect you to do some amount of maintenance on your community so that it doesn't become a total toxic cesspool. And, if you allow it to become that, let's say Young Thug makes a post, and especially on somewhere like YouTube or Instagram where the comments are algorithmically sorted, and let's say that the top response is something that threatens physical violence on the prosecutor, I mean, it wouldn't be a lot of work for you to go through and remove a comment that has 20,000 likes that is threatening her. And in addition to that, at a certain point, it's almost impossible to imagine that you would be oblivious to this. So I don't think that's the most outlandish development that we could see as time goes by.
Yeah, I thought there was some real appeal to the government's position given some of the stuff in that comment section. And then I saw Judge Whitaker's opinion and I said, wow, y'all really fell flat on your face trying to bring this argument in the context of this case. Maybe if she didn't really hate like how you guys have bought this whole case, this particular move that you guys made would have had some legs. The other thing on that case, we still have Yak Gotti locked up. Like, this man caught a not guilty.
Yeah, he's being held for what?
He's being held for, I guess, like fights that happened while he was locked up. So they charged him with being some notorious gang member. He got a not guilty, and then he's locked up in this prison with a bunch of other notorious gang members. And now he's still locked up because there was a fight in the prison or something like that. It's something about his conduct while he was being held in prison. And that is a real shame, man. This guy is still locked up for going on what, 4 years almost?
For something that realistically, it's not like he would have been getting in fistfights on the outside, more likely than not. You lock, or the system locks him up with all these other people in which there's a culture of fighting each other. Everybody I talk to about what it's like to be in county jail is very, very ordinary to get into fights with, opposing gang members or whatever. And then he's kept in there, even though he's been cleared on the charges that had him there in the first place. That seems uniquely evil.
Uniquely evil. There was that video of Lucci And like Lucci's locked up and he's supposed to be in isolation, but then the guards disappear. It's like a whole 5-minute video and he gets into a fight with some guy. That guy was never supposed to be out loose in the compound with them. We had the feds come in and investigate the Fulton County Jail for violations, saying, oh, we need to take this place over. I think there was a guy who sued down there because he was being eaten alive by ants. I mean, it's one thing to, you know, charge people for conduct in jail. It's another thing to be that, you know, to have all that context, all that backstory, have that guy get a not guilty after all those charges and that trial, that circus of a trial, and then not, like, as a prosecutor, finally let up. You know, we have, in every one of these situations, we have this concept of an adversarial system. One guy fights like hell against another guy who fights like hell, and they're just going to keep fighting like hell, and there will be a judge on top who will deliver justice as long as the two people zealously stand their positions. And that's not what happens in reality. What happens in reality is that if prosecutors fight like hell, you can get really, really shitty situations and outcomes. And so I think there are situations when prosecutors should look at it and say, enough is enough. I mean, certainly in the Yak Gotti situation, I can't believe this man is still locked up.
No, yeah. I mean, listen, if you stab somebody to death or you commit some horrible act behind there, I understand keeping somebody locked up. But I mean, I've read plenty about you know, crazy prison war stories, and I mean, I've heard about a lot worse things that weren't pursued while people were locked up. So yeah, that's terrible. We gotta free his ass. Did we cover everything, or is there anything else on this list?
That's all I got. We could do some type of closing.
For sure. Okay, Mo, appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time. Got any last words? Anything you want to shout out?
Stop going left or right. You know, if you voted for Kamala, don't hate the Trump people. If you voted for Trump, don't hate the Kamala people. The people at the top are lying to all of us, and they're going to keep getting away with it and making crazy profits and having 20 vacation homes, and they're going to have 10 yachts. They're going to start colonizing Mars. The only way to stop them is if we stop fighting with each other. If that person wants to be gay, if that person wants to be trans, if this person wants to have guns, don't fight about it, okay? What you ought to fight about is more money for the people who do the work. That's what we should be fighting about. We should all look around at each other, black, white, Asian, singles, whatever, okay, and realize that we're all in the same struggle against the man, where we work all day to get some money to feed our families, okay? And we need more of that money. That's the common tie that binds us. This left-right shit doesn't bind us, it separates us.
No, I agree. Yeah, I've gone out of my way to consume a lot less political content this cycle around because I feel like it's done damage to my mind over the years, just wasting too much time paying attention to it. That being said, I'm glad some people are paying attention to it because it does feel like we're in a sort of very dangerous position right now, depending on how the next couple months or years of our lives go. But yeah, Mo, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We will have your link in the description so that people can tap in if they're interested in your services or just staying up to date on your social media. But I appreciate you, and thanks a ton.
Yo, thanks for having me on, Adam. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thank you, Mo. Appreciate you. All right. Thanks, man. I'm going to have them shut down the Zoom and everything like that, but thanks a ton.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. Always a pleasure.
Okay. Appreciate you, G.